Boker Tov and welcome to Psalms in Hebrew and Comparative Translations. Today we're looking at Psalm 62. So we're getting through the Psalms. It's pretty fun. Um, so Psalm 62, and as usual, we will begin by reading it in the original Hebrew so that we can hear the sound of the psalm and any particular aspects of the Hebrew that are challenging. And then we'll read some translations, mm, paying special attention here for the different ways that certain Hebrew phrases are translated and how that affects the impact of the psalm. And then we'll talk about the emotional impact of the psalm, how how is it holding for us? And if we were going to use it as a prayer, what in what context would we use it? And in what emotional state would we use it for, how would we find it comforting? So we'll start by reading the psalm. Here we are, Psalm 62. Whoops. Okay. All right. Lamenatseach al Yedutun Mizmor LeDavid. Ach el Elohim dumia nafshi mimeni Yeshuati. Ahu tzuri vishuati miskabi lo emot rabba. Ad ana tehot tutu al ish tiratzchu hulchem kikir natui gader hadchuya. Ach miseito ya'atzu lahadiach yirtzu chazav befiv yivarechu uvikirbam yikalalu sela. Ach lelohim domi nafshi, ki mimenu tikvati. Ahu tsuri vishuati miskabi lo emot. Al Elohim yish'i uchvodi, tsur uzi machsi belohim. Bitchuvo bechol eit am, shifchu lefanav levavchem, Elohim machase lanu sela. Ach hevel b'nei adam chazav b'nei ish b'moznaim la'alot hema mehevel yachad. Ach tivtechu be'oshek uvagazel al tehebalu chayil ki yanuv al tashitu lev. Ach diber Elohim Achat diber Elohim, shtayim zu shamati, ki oz lelohim, ulecha Adonai chased, ki ata teshalem leish kimaasehu. For the leader on Jedutun, a psalm of David. Truly my soul waits quietly for God, from whom my deliverance comes. Truly God is my rock and deliverance, my haven, I shall never be shaken. How long will all of you attack someone to crush them as though they were a leaning wall, a tottering fence? You lay plans to topple them from their status. You delight in falsehood. You bless with your mouths while inwardly you curse. Selah. Truly, wait quietly for God, O my soul, from whom comes my hope. God is my rock and deliverance, my haven. I shall not be shaken. I rely on God, my deliverance and glory, my rock of strength. In God is my refuge. Trust in God at all times, O people. Pour out your hearts before the Holy One. God is our refuge, Selah. Humans are mere breath, mortals an illusion. Placed on a scale altogether, they weigh even less than a breath. Do not trust in violence or put false hopes in robbery. If force bears fruit, pay it no mind. One thing God has spoken, two things have I heard, that might belongs to God, and faithfulness is yours, O my sovereign, to reward everyone according to their deeds. To the chief musician, to Yedutun, a psalm of David. Truly my soul waiteth upon God, from him cometh my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation, he is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved. How long will ye imagine mischief against a man? Ye shall be slain all of you. As a bowing wall shall ye be, and as a tottering fence. They only consult to cast him down from his excellency. They delight in lies. They bless with their mouth, but they curse inwardly. Selah. My soul, wait thou only upon God, for my expectation is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation. He is my defense. I shall not be moved. In God is my salvation and my glory. The rock of my strength and my refuge is in God. Trust in him at all times, ye people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Selah. Surely men of low degree are vanity, and men of high degree are a lie. To be laid in the balance, they are altogether lighter than vanity. Trust not in oppression, and become not vain in robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart upon them. God hath spoken once, twice have I heard this, that power belongeth unto God, and also unto thee, O Lord, belongeth mercy, for thou renderest to every man according to his work. For the conductor, on Yedutun, a psalm of David. My being is wrapped in silent waiting, only for God, from whom comes my deliverance. Only God is my rock and my deliverance, my high tower. I shall not stumble about. How long will you gang up on someone that you may commit murder, all of you, like a leaning wall, a fence pushed over? Only they plot to push her from her height. They delight in lying. With the mouth they bless, and with their innards they curse. Selah. Wait silently, my being, only for God, from whom comes my hope. Only God is my rock and my deliverance, my high tower. I shall not stumble. Upon God is my deliverance and my honor, the rock of my strength. My refuge is in God. Trust in God in every period, people. Pour out your heart before the Holy One. God is a refuge for us. Selah. Only vapor are the ordinary people. Nobles are a lie. When they go up on the scales together, they are less than vapor. Do not trust in oppression, and in thievery put no vaporous hopes. If wealth bears fruit, do not set your heart on it. One thing did God speak. Twice have I heard this, that strength is with God, and with you, Adonai, is covenantal love. For you repay each person according to his deeds.
That's interesting.
All right. So, reactions, responses. What is the emotional feeling of this psalm?
I thought that last line was interesting.
Say more.
That God, I can't remember if God rewards us according to our deeds.
Yeah, God repays each person according to their deeds. That, according to the psalmist, is a part of chesed, a part of covenantal love. That is, covenant is a partnership between human beings and God. Covenant is shared responsibilities. And part of the covenant, according to this psalm, is that is that good deeds are rewarded and wrong deeds, misdeeds are punished. The covenant is that will be true. Even if you look out into the world and you see that some people amass wealth through nefarious actions, you have faith that in the long term, in the in divine time,
The end of days.
maybe the end of days, maybe life after death, maybe just that the grandchildren will end up paying for the sins of their grandparents, whatever it is. In God's time, each person is rewarded according to their deeds and punished according to their deeds. That's part of the covenant, the covenant of covenantal love. Yes, Larry.
You get the feeling reading this that or hearing it. This is a person of some authority in an organization. He's either the King David or he's president of a little organization or the chairman of not-for-profit or whatever it is. And he's being confronted by people who or of some means. They've gotten their wealth, but they've gotten it either by trickery or extortion or whatever. And they're saying, "Hey, listen, guy, we know you're supposed to be the boss, and we love you. We really do. We really support you." But underneath, they're trying to weaken him. They're trying to weaken the rabbi, oust him. And so they're flattering him with their mouths, but they're reminding him of their high position and their money and how much they give to the temple and so forth. And he's just telling them, "What's wrong with you people?" I just sit here quietly and listen to you and nod my head. But God's in this, you guys. And don't lean on your wealth and don't push around your authority and your wisdom and all this stuff. We know who you are. Think about it, man, because God rewards everyone according to his deeds. I don't have to do a thing. I will just wait here quietly. And you guys, you are going to get it in the neck. Why? Because God looks out for the righteous and the folks who use and count on their ungodly wealth, their ill-conceived wealth will, you are the tottering wall. You are the bulging fence, not whom you are thinking to treat as one. So
Yeah.
you get that sense of it. It also gives you the mystical sense. There's two worlds here: the world that people see and sense every day, that stupid, illusory world, which doesn't count human actions for anything, only intents of the heart, and the mystic world, which is the world of the heart and the world of God. So this is lovely because it sort of carries both themes, the mystic and the um, practical.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. And ultimately, all human beings are ephemeral relative to God's eternity, right? The actions that you take are insignificant, especially the actions that you take that are contrary to God's plan, are insignificant relative to the eternity of God's plan, right? Men of low degree are a mere breath. Men of high degree are but an illusion. Placed on the scales altogether, they are lighter than a breath, right? Everyone is mehevel yachad. And hevel is the same word that we get in Ecclesiastes, Kohelet. Havel havalim amar Kohelet, right? Havel havalim hakol havel. Everything is a shallow breath. Everything is everything is fleeting. Everything is vanity. Everything un is impermanent relative to God's eternity. Did anyone else have a comment?
Yeah,
Alba.
Alba. Um, there's all these contradicting words in the same sentences, and I think that has a name. It's called an oxymoron, like military intelligence or thunderous silence, stuff like that. And so there's this idea that you can have vanity and untruth. Vanity is untrue, but you have the two of them in the same sentence, you know? So there's certain things we have in the same sentence. A person that's wealthy, we often think they have some kind of insight on life, and it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. I mean, the Rockefellers give away tons of money every year.
Also, Warren Buffett.
But on the other side, on the other hand, there are people with lots of wealth, but they wield it in such a way that it only creates more wealth. It doesn't get any job done. My ex-husband used to say, what the hell is money for anyway if you're not going to spend it? And in Hello Dolly, remember Walter Matthau? He said to Barbara Streisand, I just hired this guy. He's just getting started out and he needs experience. I look at money like manure. You throw it around to make things grow. So there's a lot of contradictions in the same verses, and it's sort of like Coelet. It's there's a time for life, there's a time for death, there's a time to throw rocks, there's a time to not throw rocks. I'm seeing a lot of these contradictions in the same sentences.
Hmm. Nice. So, Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Weinrib has this to say about our psalm. Many folks have tried to list the major principles of Jewish belief. Now, I'll just pause there. It's sometimes said that Judaism is an action-based tradition, not a belief or faith-based tradition. And I understand why people say that. People say that because they've internalized the, especially Protestant, critique of Judaism and Catholicism, right? The Protestant critique is that Judaism focuses too much on law and and on the um too much on the forms and not enough on the intention, not enough on on the on the substance. Too much on form and not enough on substance. That's a critique. That's a fair critique, right? Everything that exists is a tension between form and substance in some sense, right? And so it is not true that Judaism is doesn't have beliefs. It is true that because Judaism is a family, Judaism is an a nation, you don't get kicked out of your family just for wrong belief. Whereas in Christianity, in Islam, and in some other uh, religions that are more about beliefs, you can get kicked out for having wrong belief. That's being a heretic, right? Judaism doesn't really have a concept of heresy because we have a really deep sense of mishpacha, of family. Like your great uncle who comes to the Passover table and clearly has wrong beliefs is still welcome at the Passover table, right?
I
Still
don't
part of the
know.
mishpacha. Okay?
Sorry, what's the difference between mishpacha and I mean,
Attitude.
is it attitude? Is it perspective? Is it, because if
Sorry,
you believe
what's the
that
question?
the question is, can you hear me? Because I'm wearing headsets. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
No? Everybody can hear me? I'm wearing headsets because they're doing this major, I don't know,
Yeah,
fixer-upper
just
thing
repeat.
downstairs.
The question
Okay.
is, what is the difference between mishpacha and what?
Um,
Um, um,
So Am is
um.
nation and mishpacha is family. So
Yeah, but the thing is, Um, and I think in Judaism, the idea is that you do have uh, a kind of a right. I don't know if it's a right because a right, what's a right?
No,
A
Judaism
right
doesn't really
to
have rights.
exactly, exactly. It's a matter of definition very often. There's a group of people, they have definitions. I don't think it's law based. I think it's a matter of definitions. You define, and the definition is constantly changing. You're in your car and you break a law. Okay, but what was the reason? Like what Larry said, what was the reason behind breaking that law? You're trying to save someone's life and you got to get to the hospital right now, so you start honking your horn and
Right. So
breaking all the laws of the road.
In Judaism, if you're saving a life, the other laws, it is not
Yeah.
breaking a law
Hmm.
to do what you need to do to save a life. It's actually fulfilling the law. So,
Right.
like in Judaism, that does not count. Your example isn't an example that eh, I think I think you're focused on a different part of uh my point, which is
Okay.
throughout history, Judaism has been critiqued as being a law-based tradition rather than a faith-based tradition. But it isn't
Yeah.
true. And in some sense, Jews of the latter half of the 20th century in internalized that critique. And they also started teaching it. They said, my teachers told me, Judaism isn't really a belief-based tradition. It's really a practices-based tradition. If you come to synagogue and put on your tefillin, we're not going to give you a pop quiz about what your faith is in God before we offer you an aliyah, because it's more it the action of showing up to minyan and putting on your tefillin, that is stronger in Judaism than whatever you happen to think in your own head, right? Or the example that I gave was that you can have people with wrong belief who come to your Passover Seder, but they're still part of your people. They're still part of your family.
Well, they
But
came.
it isn't true to say that Judaism doesn't have beliefs, right?
Of
It
course it
is
has.
true to say that Judaism isn't going to kick you out for wrong belief, except for some wrong beliefs. Like there are certain wrong beliefs that Judaism does sort of say, okay, that's outside, right? Like when I grew up, people said to me, Jews have to believe in at most one God, right? You believe in more than one, that's out. Although if you privately, quietly believe that the devil is like also a god, and you have two gods, two rishuyot, two sources of divine authority, as long as you're not publicly teaching about that, you probably would still get an aliyah in a Jewish synagogue, right? If nobody knows what you, right? That is unlike in Christianity and Islam, where if you don't believe that, if like in Islam, if you don't believe that Muhammad is the prophet and that Muhammad's words are divine, then you're not a Muslim, right? Like you're just out. You are no
So the
longer
question
you
would
don't
be,
have true
why
belief, you're out. Right? And
if
Judaism doesn't really have that. So many people have tried to list the major principles of Jewish belief. The most famous is the list compiled by Maimonides containing 13 major principles of Jewish faith. Our psalm, Psalm 62, offers us the occasion to reflect upon two of those 13. The eighth of Maimonides' principles, as expressed in the Yigdal poem, reads, I believe with perfect faith that the entire Torah is the one that was given to Moses, our teacher. Implicit in this statement is the belief that God, God's self, revealed the Torah to us and informed us of God's will by giving us the Torah through Moses. Moses had a role to play in transmitting the Torah, but he did not write it and he did not add to it, he taught it. Another principle reads, I believe with perfect faith that the Creator, Yitbarach Shemo, blessed be God's name, rewards those who keep God's commandments and punishes those who transgress them. Both of these principles are addressed in our psalm. Verse 11 admonishes those who gain their wealth through illegitimate means. Put not your trust in extortion. Though your riches increase, set not your heart on it. The Creator will punish those who violate the prohibition. Verse 12 tells us that God has spoken, that we heard God speak, but it presents us with a puzzle. One thing God has spoken, two things have I learned. How do we learn two things from one utterance? One approach to this problem can be found in the Aramaic translation or the Aramaic rendition of this verse. God spoke the words of Torah once, but I heard it twice from Moses. From God's perspective, the Torah was given but once, but the people heard it more than once from their teacher. What were the two lessons that the psalmist learned from the one Torah? First of all, he learned that power belongs to God, that God metes out justice powerfully, punishing the wicked as they deserve to be punished. The second lesson that the psalmist learned contravenes the first, right? And that with you, Lord, is loving kindness. Yes, God punishes without mercy, but God's love leaves open a path for the wicked to change their ways, and then they too will experience God's love. Rashi examines the very last words of our psalm, and you will reward each person according to her deeds. We are each held accountable for our deeds, and there is no escaping God's retribution for our misdeeds. But Rashi then points out that a careful reading of the Hebrew suggests otherwise. It does not say ish ma'asehu, in which case our translation would be correct. Rather, it reads ish kima'asehu, which is better translated as you will reward each person approximately in accordance to her deeds. This injects a large measure of love into God's justice. There is room for forgiveness, for the consideration of mitigating circumstances, and for taking into account the sinner's state of mind in order to minimize the degree of his guilt. Maimonides' list of principles mentions only reward and punishment. There is no mention of love. Our psalm objects to such stringency and insists that even when exercising God's power, God does not lose sight of merciful forgiveness. Larry.
Does the word Torah mean teaching?
Yeah, or instruction.
Yeah, it seems like the law is part of, like when you're a kid and you're in grade school, you got to learn ABCs and you got to learn to put words together and learn concepts and logic and you got before you start applying it to meaning. And it's almost like the law is ABCs. And that once you learn all this alphabet and how the words go together, you start to realize what it's saying. Now, once you're by mitzvah and you're through with all the basics, if you go on, now wisdom is taught, but you don't learn the wisdom that the law points to. And it's all summed up in both Old Testament and New. You shall love the Lord your God with all your levavcha, with all your heart, with all your nefeshcha, and meodecha. But Jesus added mind, which implies that the only difference is you guys should have the basics by now. We've been doing this Old Testament for a long time. Wake up and start right in on the wisdom that the law is all pointing you to. But there's people make a focus on the law and parsing it and extending it, and they build this fence around the Torah that, as famously said, keeps people out rather than protects the Torah. The Torah doesn't need protecting. We need protecting from not being able to get in.
Mm.
So it's the two worlds that exist simultaneously that people are so mono instead of binary instead of, or multi.
Yeah.
It's we just reduce things to the literal level, and where you miss everything. It's all
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It's impossible for me, for example, to not be Jewish. I'm a Jew who listens to what Jesus said, and I get to work with all these goyim. It's wonderful. And to help teach them Judaism. I tell them all in my sermons, you're all Jews, welcome. Let me explain this to you. And people start to get it a little bit.
Yeah, that's
It,
a very sort of Paulian approach.
what?
It's an approach that has been around since Paul.
Oh yeah, my name is Paul also, my assumed name. I love this guy.
Yeah.
I really
Alba.
dig him, and I just I know I'm a Jew, and my mission is out there to the goyim. So it's important to do that, I think. So, but like you do not stop being a Jew. I am a Jew. These artificial things about calling them religions, it's living, it's life. There aren't different religions. There's the Torah is the teaching. They put it in the front of the New Testament. You can't get to the New Testament until you got the Old Testament down, or at least you've let it work on you.
Yeah. Alba.
Yeah, a completely different comment on the side. You know how over the Adon HaKodesh we have like the two tablets, and depending on the art and the amount of money you have, you can have some really beautiful ones that have like Anochi and then all the other junk that goes there. And there's two times that the Ten Commandments show up, in Exodus and Deuteronomy. And one of them says what is that? Practice, and the other one is remember. Keep and remember and keep. And the one that's chosen for over the oh God, this is never going to end. Can you guys hear the thumpings?
Nope. We just hear
You
you.
can't. Oh my goodness gracious me! I can feel them right through the floor. Okay, no problem. So the big question comes down to which one are you going to stick up there? You're going to put Shamor or you're going to put Zachor
Yeah,
up on the
they generally put the one from Exodus, not the one from Deuteronomy.
right.
Zachor.
So Zachor. So we put the Zachor there.
Yeah.
But if you're in the synagogue and you're all dressed up and you're sitting there and you're listening to these people talk and you're doing stuff and reading the Siddur and all of that, you're there. You're there. You remembered to come. You're practicing. So why don't they just put both of them up there? Or why do they just put the remember up there? And I think it comes down to, I think what Larry was, remember why you're there. The thing is, it says remember, but you do remember perfectly well. I'm there to find a husband for my daughter, or I'm there to make connections, or maybe meet a new friend or something like that. But it's not that. It's remember why you're there. Why are we sitting here doing this? There's got to be something you can draw from it. Okay.
Great. So your comment is a really good transition to the next part of our class, which is to think about the use of this psalm in the Jewish liturgical tradition. And of course, this psalm has no uses in the Jewish liturgical tradition. We don't read Psalm 62 in our prayer service at all. But there are some very famous Talmudic passages that deal with exactly what you're talking about, Alba, with this verse that says, Achat diber Elohim, shtayim zu shamati. Uh, God spoke once, but I heard two things. So here we have a passage from the Jerusalem Talmud, which is the earlier of the two Talmuds. And uh, and it's from here they're talking about the differences between different laws in the in the Torah. And so it's exactly what you were saying about the different versions of the Ten Commandments. Our first two cases here of Achat Diber Elohim, Shtaim Zu Shamati, God spoke once, but we heard two different things were received. We the first one here is vain and untruth. Both were said together, which is impossible for the human mouth to say and the human ear to hear. But the divine word contained both. And so this is one way to understand why, when Moses taught the Ten Commandments in the book of Deuteronomy, why Moses didn't repeat exactly the same thing that was written in the book of Exodus is because God revealed God's self and multiple things were heard. So we actually record both things that were heard at Sinai are recorded just in different places in the Torah. So the ninth commandment, which says, "You shall not take you shall not uh, um,
Covet.
the the ninth commandment, which is about testifying in court. Um, let's pull up the commandment itself so that we can look at it. Um,
Is that covered?
yeah, I'm working on it. All right. All right. So here we have uh the book of Exodus, and we have the ninth commandment.
Covered. Yeah.
Lo ta'aneh b'reacha eid shaker. Shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And here we have the ninth commandment. And it says, Lo ta'aneh b'reacha eid shav. So we heard both eid shaker and eid shav. Ultimately, these mean the same thing, but shaker means false or lying, and shav means vain or in vain. So, like both vain and untruth, Eid Shav and Eid Shakir were both written, are both were both heard, were both experienced by God, by people who heard the Ten Commandments. So the two versions of the ninth commandment, Eid Shakir and Eid Shav, both are Sinaitic, meaning they were both given at Sinai versions, which had been said in parallel but were written serially, right? So Echad Diber Elohim, God said both at the same time. Okay, and here's another case, Zachor and Shamor. Just like Alba said, the two versions of the fourth commandment, both were said together, which is impossible for the mouth to say and the ear to hear, right? Okay, now the rest of the examples are not cases from the Ten Commandments, but are cases where laws seem to contradict each other. And we're going to go through some of these. Um, in the Jewish tradition, the the oral tradition explains how these things narrowly apply in such a way that they don't actually contradict. But when you read them in the text itself, they seem to contradict. For example, its desecrator shall be put to death, meaning the one who desecrates Shabbat shall be put to death, meaning a person who lights a fire on Shabbat is liable for death. But it also says that uh, the burnt offering for Shabbat is two unblemished 1-year-old sheep, right? Uvayom HaShabbat shni kvasim b'nei shana timimim, two blemished yearlings. Okay, so these it's impossible to offer a burnt offering without lighting a fire. And so these two things seem to be in contradiction. How can you have a law that says you shall not start fires on Shabbat and a law that explains what the burnt offering for Shabbat is? Right? So from here to the end of the section of the Talmud, we have laws that contradict one another. The the Shabbat sacrifice actually requires many actions, which, if you did them outside of the sacred service of the temple, they would be capital offenses because they would be violating Shabbat. Both were said together, which is impossible for the mouth to say and the ear to hear. Here's another case. The nakedness of your brother's wife you shall not uncover. Okay, right? You're not allowed to have sex with your brother's wife, right? That's a law in Leviticus. You shall not have sex with your brother's wife. Okay, but we also have the law that if your brother dies childless, you're automatically married to your brother's wife, and the first child that you produce will inherit your brother's property, right? That is the law of the levirate marriage. But the law of levirate marriage is in direct contradiction to the law that says that you can't have sex with your brother's wife. Okay? Uh, the in Numbers 36, we see a verse that says the property can't transfer from one tribe to another. And that is to say, land. The land has to stay within the tribe. And then we also have the idea that daughters can inherit property. And in the case of the daughters of Tzlofchad, they are allowed to inherit property, but then they're told that they have to get married within their own tribe so that their land won't leave the tribe. Right? Here's another case. You're not allowed to wear a garment that is made from linen and wool, right? Even one thread of linen in a wool garment or one thread of wool in a linen garment completely invalidates the garment. You're not allowed to wear uh, linsey woolsey, okay? You and yet we also have a law that says you shall attach a fringe of wool. You shall attach a woolen blue thread to the corner of your linen garment. So this feels like it's a contradiction, right? Deuteronomy 22:11, wearing wool and linen together is forbidden. But verse 12, any garment, including linen ones, is required to have fringes, which have to contain a dark blue woolen thread. So again, both of these were said together. And so the Talmud concludes here, uh, so it says in Psalm 62, God spoke once, two I heard from this. And it is written, and this is a verse from Jeremiah, is not my word like fire, says the Eternal, and like a hammer which shatters a rock, right? Like just like a hammer hits a rock and sends sparks. So that's what God's words are like. In other words, many, many, many interpretations, many, many sparks can come from one divine utterance. Alba.
Yeah. Like on Saturday, what is the rabbi boy or rabbi girl's job? It's to work on Saturday. So you have the service and you got to work on Saturday. And then we take the Sefer Torah out of the Aron HaKodesh and we carry this like 20-pound thing around the room. And then when we're finished, we carry it around the room again and we bring it back to the beginning. So we're carrying something, and the
Both of
rabbi
those
person,
both of those examples are a good
yeah.
attempts, but right, like
Oh,
it's true that the rabbi works on Shabbat, but
yeah.
the rabbi does not do milacha on Shabbat, right? The rabbi is not asked to violate Shabbat on Shabbat. Um, right? Like there's no problem with teaching Torah. There's no, right? All of those things are permitted on Shabbat. It's true that the rabbi works. The rabbi does not get a day off on Shabbat in the way that other people get days off, right? I hear that. I have to work on Shabbat, but I don't do milacha on Shabbat. I don't violate the Shabbat by working. And
Mhm.
and since I'm salaried, right, I'm not paid by the hour. You're not really paying me for work that I do on Shabbat either. You're paying me to be your rabbi, and that just comes with some responsibilities. So, uh, in the case of the carrying, you're not allowed to carry on Shabbat from one domain to another, but there's no
Mhm.
problem with carrying within a building. So, carrying the Sefer Torah around the room the does not violate the laws of Shabbat. But these examples, the examples that are given here in the Jerusalem Talmud, these examples are examples where the Torah itself seems to be in direct contradiction. And like I said, the each of these cases are cases where we the rabbinic tradition has limited the scope of the law in such a way that they're not actually in it, that they don't actually contradict. But
Wait,
if
wait,
you just read the text of the Torah itself, they do seem to contradict. And so let's look at this same passage, or a very similar text from the Babylonian Talmud. The Babylonian Talmud is discussing this ruling, and they say, "From where is this matter derived?" Abaye says, it's derived from the verse from Psalms. God has spoken once, twice have I heard this, that strength belongs to God. Abaye explains, one verse is stated by God, and from it emerge several explanations. But one explanation does not emerge from several verses. Alternatively, the school of Rabbi Yishmael taught that the verse states, "Is not my word like fire, says the Lord, and like a hammer that breaks the rock in pieces," which is a verse from Jeremiah. Just as the hammer breaks the stone into several fragments, so too one verse is stated by God, and from it emerge several explanations. In other words, the way the rabbis understand this achat diber Elohim, shtayim zu shamati, is that when human beings encounter a revelation, when finite human beings in finite human language and our finite human world encounter a revelation of the eternal, one utterance of that revelation can mean many, many different things. And I think that's a very powerful understanding of revelation. And it's also part of why Torah is so powerful, because in every generation, one reads it again and it speaks in each generation to the needs of that generation. Uh, Torah is able to do that because of this principle, because of Achati Ber Elohim, Shtayim Zu Shamati. If God spoke and and there was uh, uh, only one thing was heard, if we were able to completely understand eternity in our finite world, then we wouldn't, then paradoxically, the Torah wouldn't be as eternal as it is, because the Torah would only have stood, it wouldn't have stood the test of time. The Torah would only have uh, been relevant to the people who originally heard it. The Torah would only have meant one thing in one time at one place, and it wouldn't have meant all of the things that it continues to mean as we continue to engage with it over the generations. Alba.
Yeah, two things. In the talit, you make a hole, in the corner, and then you embroider around it so that it doesn't, fray out and stuff.
Yeah.
You put a cord through there, any kind of cord, whether it be of wool or leather or silk or whatever. It's really not a part of the garment.
Okay.
Not like a button. A button depends on being a part of the garment just to stay on the garment. It's got to be stuck on there somehow. So like there's those whole places, where you can go for the shot nets and they'll just like cut all the buttons off and sew them back on with something else, like
Hmm.
polyester. And so there is that distinction between the if you're attaching something as opposed to something is just hanging there,
Yeah.
basically suspended in the air, and it only hangs because gravity pulls it down. If you were in a spaceship, it would float in that little hole. Okay, so then the other thing is like in physics, there's a truity that if you are in the lecture hall, and it's one of those amphitheater style lecture halls, if you go down and pick up the desk and carry it up the stairs, go around and carry it back down the stairs and put it right back where you got it from, you didn't do any work. You didn't work because you can take a snapshot of it before and you can take a snapshot of it after, and it's still in the same place. So you haven't really done anything. So the idea of, like you were saying, you carry the Sefer Torah around, you read it, then you carry it back around backwards the other way and put it away. You haven't done any work. You've
Well,
taken it out, you put
yes.
it back.
I think what you're pointing to is that milacha, right? What you're
Mm-hmm.
prohibited from doing on Shabbat, milacha,
Is
which often
changing
gets
something.
translated as work, but let's just call it
Yeah.
milacha, right?
Yeah.
Milacha is not the same thing as scientific physical work, right? Work in physics is the amount of change in amount of force that it takes to have a change in position over time or whatever. I
Right.
forget exactly. It's been a while since I took high school physics. But
Oh,
uh, you know, what you're talking about is if a thing has changed position and then you've moved it back, that there is a net zero of work, right? It might have
exactly.
taken some force to move it out of position, and then it took the exact opposite
Same
amount of
amount of
force
force.
to move it back into position. And so there's a net zero amount of work that has been done because the position ultimately hasn't changed. And certainly
Right.
there's a Sisyphean, right, frustration to the fact that sometimes we spend a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of force changing things that ultimately don't change. And so it feels like we did a lot of work for no reason. But melacha is a different category. Melacha is whether you have done acts of creation and destruction that are part of the 39 categories of melacha, as which are enumerated in the Mishnah, and carrying within a building, right, within the sanctuary of the synagogue is not
Yeah.
because you're not moving from one domain to another domain, meaning from private space to public space or from public space to private space, right? You have not done milacha, right? Carrying on Shabbat is prohibited from your house to the street and like along the street and from the street
Oh,
to the synagogue. You're not allowed to carry your talis bag from home to the synagogue unless there is an eruv, unless there is a legal fiction that creates uh, a
space.
private space within the public space, right? That if
Right.
you've done this act before Shabbat of designating a certain space as communally private, then you can carry within that space because you've followed the designated rule of how to do it. Okay? But we do not define milacha as force over time or effort or anything like that, right? It isn't. We do our understanding of labor is not the same as the physics understanding of labor, right?
Okay, stop. Wait, there's this one place, I think it's in the Talmud Eruvim. Not sure. I can't, I could never spit in my palm and shake hands on it. But wasn't there a story about they were running across the roofs and jumping from roof to roof so that they could go and carry stuff from one place to another?
I don't remember
And
that.
oh
I
gosh,
don't
I'll
remember
have to
that.
look it up. I'm sure I've got it wrong, but there was this thing about how you define, because in Eruvim, the idea is how do you define this space?
Yes,
Is it a big space, a little
correct.
space?
But in the context of what you're saying, right, with your physics example, the
Mm,
it's a category error to think that uh to assume that because something takes force or effort, that it is understood as milacha in the
mhm.
Jewish definition, right? It's better to ask yourself, is this an act of creation or destruction, right? Acts of creation and
Yeah.
destruction tend to be considered as milacha. So I just want to close out our class today with reading the spiritual applications from Rabbi Richard Levy, and then we'll meet again next week.
Wait,
Same
wait, 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 wait,
same
wait. Don't
time,
forget.
same place.
Wait, what do you do about eating a piece of bread? That's complete and total destruction. Ah.
Yes, you're allowed to eat on Shabbat. Permitted.
Yeah. There's
All
some
right.
things.
My
uh, okay.
Rabbi Richard
All right.
Levy says, "My being is wrapped in silent waiting." Have we adopted waiting as a spiritual practice? Are we aware of our longing to feel the presence of God, to feel the responsiveness of God to our situation? To be aware of our yearning for God is the first step in becoming aware of God. The periods of silence suggested above in response to Psalm 61 can bring this awareness to bear fruit. We are cautioned in this psalm to remember where to find eternal truth on which we can rely, and what in life is ephemeral. Ach l'Elohim, only in God may we wait. Other aspirations for wealth or honor, ill-gotten power and possessions are all vaporous. They last only as long as our breath on a cold day, or the steam from boiling water. In this way, the poet extends the thought of Kohelet 1:1 and beyond to claim that life is not vaporous if our concentration is on God. Indeed, to concentrate on God can begin, as classical meditation does, with one's breath, the vaporous substance that we breathe in and breathe out. But that vaporous breath is not ephemeral. It is what God breathes into us from God's own Spirit, and it will keep coursing through us as long as we live. May we be kept alive by vapor. We may be kept alive by vapor, but it is the vapor of God. We are each a membrane through which God's presence moves through the world. Of all these acquisitions, only kavod, only honor is redemptive because it is a reflection of God's kavod, God's glory. When people pay us honor, the psalm suggests that we should deflect the credit to God. For example, if someone were to say it to us, "How kind and thoughtful you are," we might reply, "What my friend perceives is the kind and thoughtful God working through me."
Amen.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you next week, Tuesday, uh, the 22nd at 10 a.m.
Larvae.
Thank you,
So
Rabbi.
how's camp?
Oh, it's good. I
Are
know.
you in a mountain somewhere?
Yes.
Yeah, you're on a mountain somewhere?